see ya. How's it going?
Definitely go for a drink.
Wake the up, samurai. We have a city to burn.
How's it going? Welcome back to another great video with your boy the Savior. If you're new to the channel, which is highly likely, become a wise boy today, join the channel today and subscribe. It takes 2 seconds for you guys, but it means a lot to me. I know I should probably, buy you some dinner first before asking you to subscribe, but just trust me, you won't be disappointed. I work hard on my videos, and if you like game retrospectives, video essays, philosophical content, all that kind of stuff, you've come to the right place. Now, this video is something I've wanted to make for a very long time now because it means a lot to me, and it's just still so sad to see that so many people are just completely neglecting Cyberpunk 2077, especially now. I feel it's a good time to talk about it because the new massive DLC is coming out very, very soon. And I think this is going to revolutionize the game and make it just exactly what it should have been on release, but most people will just sadly not even bother to play it or give it a second chance. And it's a real shame, and I myself was like that. So before I get into the real nitty-gritty of this video, because I have so much to say, I just need to obviously address the elephant in the room, and that is the launch versus to what it is now, after the updates, after Edgerunners, all of that good stuff. So I myself, was very, very, very upset with Cyberpunk 2077. I think this was the last time I actually pre-ordered a game. Maybe some of you can relate, and I urge all of you now to never pre-order games because that's how we get these broken games, and that's how the gaming industry is in the state it is in now. But yeah, I did pre-order this because I bought into the hype, being a stupid idiot back when it released. I've now obviously become a much wiser person. Maybe they were being pressured by, shareholders, by the publishers themselves, who knows, but either way, it was a sick joke. But compare that game to what it is now, okay? Before, you couldn't get through a single mission without like 500 different bugs.
Did you see what happened? Something feels off here.
Characters not actually opening their mouths when they speak, people just T-posing, your ding-dong would just fall out of your pants and just flap around in the wind whenever you're walking about. It was a complete joke. But now, it's still not 100% perfect, but it's as close to perfect as possible. Most of the time, we are just lied to, and the state of corruption that's in the gaming industry now is just beyond a joke, but that's not what I'm here to talk about in this video. I just want to give you my up-to-date, my Cyberpunk 2077 review, my re-review of Cyberpunk 2077, and why you should play Cyberpunk 2077 in 2023. You need to play Cyberpunk 2077 in 2023 because if you are still upset about the launch, I understand, because I pre-ordered it, it was a complete joke, I played it too much so I couldn't even get a refund back, and it was completely broken. It ruined my first time with this game, which is a real shame. I got it on PC, and then I bought it again recently on the Xbox Series X, and I'm so glad I did, even though now it's basically cost me 100 quid, which is kind of a sick joke. I still think it was worth every penny now that I've actually managed to play it properly. I've put 60 plus hours into it so far, actually more than that if you take the other PC game file that I had before. I don't want to rant on about the launch and then what it is now, because so many people have done that, but pretty much it's a completely different game now when you compare it to the launch. And I think Edgerunners, the show Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which is a masterpiece, I made a separate video about that, so I'll link to it if you want to see my breakdown, philosophical analysis of Edgerunners.
Hey, V, good to see you. How's it going?
We'll definitely go for a drink.
As you can tell, I love Cyberpunk, and I wanted to love Cyberpunk from the very get-go because it kind of birthed my music career as well, and I just got so much inspiration from the world of Cyberpunk and Night City. I love dystopian sci-fi, dreams of electronic sheep, or Blade Runner, whatever you want to call it. I love that type of dystopian sci-fi narrative because I feel it's the most realistic sci-fi, and it portrays what kind of future we will actually end up as instead of something idealistic like Star Wars or Star Trek. As much as I would like that, it's much more closer to reality, this type of dystopian sci-fi narrative, and that's why I love it so much. I just love the darkness, the corruption, the dystopian nightmare, because Blade Runner is not that far away anymore, and that's why I love to talk about dystopian philosophical ideas and try and tear down the establishment, because I don't actually want to end up in a Blade Runner world. That would be absolute hell. And I know that sounds crazy saying that Cyberpunk 2077 has always been a masterpiece, but I think it was just buried under piles and piles of shit. And sadly, most people never forgave it and they haven't gotten back to it. But if you look at games like No Man's Sky, developers who actually care about the core experience, they didn't give up on it and they have made it a polished game now, and the same thing with Cyberpunk. So I urge you to go back and play it. Now that's the intro out of the way, so now let's jack in and look at the dystopian nightmare of Night City and why you should play Cyberpunk 2077, why Cyberpunk 2077 has always been a masterpiece, and this is why you need to play Cyberpunk 2077. Did I say that enough? Maybe the algorithm likes me now. So I wrote down a bunch of stuff that you can't see off screen, but I thought about this a lot. So this is going to be a long video essay on Cyberpunk 2077. So first I'm going to talk about the gameplay, then I'm going to go into the philosophy segment, my personal thoughts, and sum up Night City at the end of the video. So I hope you enjoy this retrospective review of Cyberpunk 2077. I put a lot of effort into this Cyberpunk 2077 retrospective, so if you do enjoy it, make sure you do subscribe, and I might do more video essays. So the gameplay of Cyberpunk 2077 is actually the most boring thing about it, I would say, but it's still great, because if it wasn't good, then I wouldn't keep coming back to it. It has to be addictive, you know, a game needs a good gameplay, even if it's a super strong narrative or interesting tonally. If you look at some Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay footage on YouTube, look up these montages, you can see just how amazing this game truly is, because if you're a skilled player, you can look like a goddamn badass. I haven't seen a game where you can look this cool ever, period. If you are skilled enough, you can literally be like Neo out of the Matrix, and it's goddamn amazing. I think what the gameplay does so well is the combat. Okay, there's a whole loop that I'm going to talk about, but basically the combat has to be good, and the combat is amazing in Cyberpunk 2077. Now that it's got high frame rate and it doesn't drop and it's not a piece of broken crap, you can just fully enjoy the gunplay, and the gunplay is done so well. The animations, the detail is what's so amazing about this game, but the combat is just so well done because there are so many different playstyles that you can have. You can be a sneaky, invisible hacker and you never have to actually physically touch someone if you don't want to be. You can upgrade yourself that way. You can be a biological human that's like super pumped up on crack or something and just go out there with a sledgehammer. It's not like an ideal playstyle, but it's possible. And you want to fulfill your fantasy of being Quicksilver from X-Men, or the Flash, I don't know, there's so many of them, A-Train from The Boys. You know, you have the ability to slow down time. There are smart guns that target the enemies for you without being like a cheap auto aim. There is ricochet weapons where the bullets will just fly off walls to hit the enemies. The technology in this game is so well thought out, and it just merges with the gameplay and the world building so well that it just feels so immersive, and it's just so well done. Most video games have a rinse-repeat cycle to them, even if there is some variation, and yes, of course, you are still just killing a bunch of people most of the time, but not always necessarily. But it's the setup, it's the context, it's the mission itself that's always different. You are never going to get the same mission. I just feel this does a far better open world gameplay design compared to something like GTA 5, where it's kind of the same thing. You get in a car, you have to follow someone for ages, go to a certain point on the map. This feels organic, it just happens naturally. You're following a character because you're actually interested. There are different branching paths, of course not as we were promised, but there are on many missions actually, and people just don't give it enough credit. Nothing as groundbreaking as New Vegas or even, you know, Fallout 3, which isn't known for massive amounts of choice, but there is still choices to be made, just in the way you act and engage with combat, all kinds of things, and with narrative choices as well. When you're talking to characters, in gigs, in side missions, there are different paths that you can choose. Not only do you get to choose from a wide range of different perks and different skills, but you can stack them, and basically you don't have enough resources to get into everything, so you really have to focus on what kind of character you want to build. If you want to be intelligent when it comes to tech, if you want to focus just on tech itself, or strength or dexterity, how quick you want to be, how much of a brute you want to be, how much damage you want to take, or if you want to go the opposite route and just focus on stealth. There is a lot of customization, and then on top of that is the cybernetics, which is also modifiable. Your weapons are modifiable, your gear is modifiable. There's so much going on here in the gameplay department, and this is what makes Cyberpunk 2077 a great RPG. In my opinion, it's not so great when it comes to choices and consequences, but not every RPG needs to focus on that. Of course, that would be nice if there was more of that. I'm not trying to like let them off the hook, because they did promise that, but there is still enough there, and it's the gameplay mechanics that make it a great RPG, in my opinion. So I have so many memories of these side main missions because each one is so different. You could be, you know, trying to bust a crime case with your buddy detective over here, or he could be your lover if you want to swing that way. I'm not here to judge. And you can find like a super disturbing case, or you could be helping this madman who thinks he's the second coming of Christ, and basically decide, yes, there is actual consequences. You can decide if you want to nail him to the cross. You can decide when you want to help him and leave him, you know, at the family house, or later on down the line when he's at the studio. There is so much detail when it comes to these missions. You know, they aren't just gameplay for the sake of gameplay. You know, when combat actually takes place, it's because the situation requires combat. You know, something happens and it's a dangerous place, Night City. It all feels immersive, but most of the time you're just walking around and talking to people, and that's where the game is at its best. So yeah, that's why I love it so much. I'm going to talk more about the writing and stuff later on, but I'm just giving you an overview of the gameplay because most people miss out on it because yeah, they just gave up on it straight away because of the bugs, and they haven't tried it again. So I'm trying to convince you to try it out, because this game really makes me think. The philosophical implications of it really has changed my outlook on how I view the world around me and how I think more about dystopian ideas and technology and all this stuff, which is very important for me because that's a big thing on my channel and something I think about a lot with humanity. So the gameplay is not the most important thing about this game, but it is very important because that's what makes a game enjoyable. If it was absolutely boring and tedious, obviously no one would play it. So the core gameplay loop is good with the side missions and the main missions. And then, like I said, you have the gigs. They are pretty much just tiny little objectives in which you can make money. Now, the gigs are just quick, easy objectives to make some eddies, to make some money, and they're nothing that special. Usually it's just a combat situation, or you can go around and you can find, different gang members and just take them out, and you'll get rewarded that way through one of your contacts. These two things are just quick, easy kind of side filler activities if you want to make money and if you want to engage more in the combat, but this isn't the only way you can actually make money. So now onto the main reward structure of Cyberpunk 2077. I'm talking only about the new updated Cyberpunk 2077, the one now in 2023, because before there wasn't that much. But now you can choose from a whole wide variation of different vehicle types that you want to buy. You can get upgrades for your cybernetics, you can get better guns, you can get better outfits, and you can spend your money now on new different apartments, and that's a really nice touch, I think. I still think there could have been better rewards and more things to actually do in Night City outside of just the gameplay loop mission structure of it, just side activities to enjoy, like go drinking at a bar, go to a club. It would have been cool if you could call up one of your contacts who you form a relationship with and you can hang out with them like you do in GTA. There are races in this, but it's a part of a mission structure. It's not a side thing you can just engage with. So I wish there was more side activities to do, not just mission stuff. But sadly, that is just the game we got. And I think the reward structure could be better because, like I said, once you get all of the apartments, then there's pretty much nothing to look forward to. But you can't actually afford all of the apartments unless if you grind this game forever, or all of the cars, so you still have to make choices. And that's what I love about this game, especially early on. I would say for the first 20 levels or so, or even more, I'm still finding it difficult now, but it's very difficult to actually make money in Cyberpunk 2077, and that's really great world building for Night City, unless if you do cheesy tactics, which of course there are so many ways to do that, but if you play it straight, it's actually quite difficult to make money, and I find that pretty rewarding because I hate games where you just do a mission and then suddenly you have all of the money in the world. Also, I like the feature where basically when you're interacting with these different characters, you can actually have conversations with them by calling them up, by answering text messages. There is a lot of detail going on, so there's always something to distract you, or you can actually meet some characters in person and they'll have extra dialogue. You can go to quite a few bars and just soak up the atmosphere and talk to people there. So there is stuff to engage with, but if you are just cruising around and you're not actually going towards something, then pretty much it's an empty city. But there is still a lot of ambience, and the NPCs now react with actual intelligence, where before they were complete robotic idiots. Now they might actually fight you if you piss them off. They actually react to you, shooting and stuff like that, so it's much better. So that's the gameplay loop so far.
With a better approach or better outcome is that we achieve democratization of AI technology, meaning that no one company or small set of individuals has control over advanced AI technology. I think that's very dangerous. It could also get stolen by somebody bad, like some evil dictator of the country could send their intelligence agency to go steal it and gain control. It just becomes a very unstable situation, I think, if you've got any incredibly powerful AI. You just don't know who's going to control that. So it's not as though I think that the risk is that the AI would develop a will of its own right off the bat. I think it's more that's the concern is that someone may use it in a way that is bad, and even if they weren't going to use it in a way that's bad, that somebody could take it from them and use it in a way that's bad. That I think is quite a big danger.
All of us already are cyborgs. So you have a machine extension of yourself in the form of your phone and your computer and all your applications. You are already superhuman. But by far, you have more power, more capability than the President of the United States had 30 years ago. If you have an internet link, you have an oracle of wisdom. You can communicate to millions of people. You can communicate to the rest of Earth instantly. These are magical powers that didn't exist not that long ago. So everyone is already superhuman.
Now, transhumanism is a massive philosophical movement which is now more relevant than ever, I would say, because we have people working in Google, people like Elon Musk who wants to link our brains with a neural net, Neuralink and stuff like that, and everything is getting more automated. AI is on the rise, I've talked about it before, but transhumanism is now probably one of the biggest philosophies in our current world that's kind of going mainstream. And Cyberpunk 2077 deals exactly with the themes of Cyberpunk 2077 deals exactly with the themes of a transhumanist society. What does that look like? Well, it doesn't look that good, and that's not necessarily to say that, you know, transhumanism always leads to a dystopian society, but most of the time it will. When corporations are one of the main sources of power in the world, of course you're going to get a dystopian, corrupt society most of the time, because regulations will not be in place, and basically, just like it is in the modern world, they have a monopoly, so they can pretty much get away with a lot of bureaucratic, corrupt stuff and influence governments, elections, all that kind of stuff. And Cyberpunk deals with a very interesting world because the history is kind of similar to ours, but then it splits off where corporations become more powerful than governments, and that might actually happen. Whereas old religion or older philosophies like Stoicism or Buddhism is about acceptance and transcendence through your morality and virtue and all that kind of stuff that I encourage you to engage with. Transhumanism is about not accepting your fate as a human being and overcoming it with technology, but I see it more as a de-evolution than an evolution, because yes, you can change a lot of things with the transhumanism mindset. You can become a stronger human being, you might even live forever in a digital space. You can, of course, upgrade your body with cybernetics, be a lot more intelligent. With having your machine linked with having your brain linked with machines, obviously you can become super intelligent, all of this stuff. But when it's controlled and dictated, the technology itself, by corporations and different outlets, but when technology itself is manufactured and produced by a hyper-capitalist society, most of the time it will lead to a power dynamic, a power struggle of the consumer versus the manufacturer. And that is where Cyberpunk 2077 takes place, is in this dystopian transhumanist society where it's all about indulging in your base pleasures. You see people wearing VR headsets and just indulging in adult content, let's just say. People are completely void of humanity anymore, and violence is common. No one seems to have any type of morality anymore. It's all about who can make as much money as possible and how they can basically get the most pleasure out of this twisted existence. And I feel that's very true, especially today in our modern society. A lot of people are addicted to technology. It's all about narcissism and gratification, and that's why I think transhumanism is a dangerous philosophy, because it basically rejects the humanist approach to life. And what a transhumanist wants is a future where humanity is completely taken out of the picture and you're in a post-human world, where you're living a post-human life. So you're not even human anymore. So I just don't see this as a productive, useful philosophy. Yes, there are good things to come out of it, like, for example, if you have lost a limb or if you need medical attention, perhaps integrating with technology will help you that way. Perhaps it could make you a lot more smarter and keep up with AI and do greater things for humanity and creations and all of this kind of stuff. If you're integrating with a corporate society and hyper-capitalism, which is what Cyberpunk 2077 is all about, this is why it leads to a dystopian nightmare where corporations just feast on the civilians of the world, and basically everyone is unregulated. They can do whatever the hell they want. And of course, with technology becoming the grand narrative, morality, virtue, and religion and faith, that's all completely neglected. I just love the theme of kind of self-hatred that humanity has for itself when it's kind of halfway between a transhumanist kind of utopia, even though it's a dystopia instead of a utopia, and basically this rejection of nature, which is what transhumanism is all about. And when AI is running free and they've broken through, this kind of firewall, and they are now integrated in society, most human beings in this world don't know if they even have free will at all, or if they are just being conditioned by the society that they are living in, their actions through criminality or by doing lots of adult entertainment work, if you know what I'm saying. I can't say it on YouTube, which is annoying. Maybe they are just forced to go down that route because this is what society expects of them, and they've been conditioned by all of these algorithms and advertisements. And I think that's very interesting, this question of morality, because that's exactly what's prevalent in our modern day society today. And just asking the ideas of what is consciousness, what is personality, with V and his relationship with Johnny, slowly you might realize that you're becoming more and more like Johnny, or maybe Johnny is becoming more and more like V. You also meet characters throughout the game who actually have identity crises. You also meet characters throughout the game who have an identity crisis. Maybe their personalities are slowly being erased by a mega corporation that's actually out to control them so they can control the government. Or you have characters that are so emotionally damaged that the only way they can escape that is by taking their own lives. Some very bleak, dark themes Cyberpunk 2077 deals with. The questions around morality. You meet this great character who basically was a bad person and he killed a lot of people, and he's trying to bring back some kind of faith in this modern world, but because no one is interested in religion anymore, you find this media corporation basically extorting his values for entertainment, and you can choose whether or not to nail him to a cross. You get this strong repenting sense that, your character and the characters around you, they all have done something bad, because it's impossible to be virtuous in this dystopian city nowadays. So everyone is kind of repenting in their own way, and there's a lot of self-hatred, because transhumanism at the end of the day is about simply overcoming your biological purposes, not through morality or virtue or self-discipline, but by seeking technological improvement, by just artificially creating something that isn't human anymore. That's the whole point. And this is why most people in this world resort to pleasure seeking and gluttony. And that's the thing with transhumanism. It's a very dangerous philosophy, because if you do genetic engineering, if you have AI or nanotechnology, cyberware, in a society, then what is the value of a human being anymore? What is the value of our consciousness when we can just alter everything? And I think transhumanism has already started. With the transgender movement, transhumanism is already at its beginning phases, because when we destroy gender, then that's how we first get into this philosophical nihilistic hole of transhumanism, where barriers don't exist anymore, where fundamental truth doesn't seem to have a place in this world, because everything can just be reconstructed and remade, denying biology. Now, like I said before, this is the complete opposite to philosophy that I practice, like Stoicism or Buddhism or Shintoism, where it's about accepting human nature and accepting nature around you. Transhumanism fundamentally hate this biological world that we live in, and they want to alter everything they can by changing their evolution. And human beings are the first creatures to ever actually do this, because we have the power of time travel within our consciousness. We can actually control our futures to a degree, so we can actually alter our evolution and become a post-human, which is what the transhumanists want. But if you have a transhumanist society basically embedded in a capitalistic corporate world, of course it's going to end with a lot of corruption, greed, and the value of money and power and hierarchy structure is going to be the number one thing. Because technology is expensive, of course a corporate world will create a class society where there's a lot of tribal warfare between the classes and a lot of disconnect between the higher elite people in society because they have capital, because they have upgrades themselves with technology compared to the civilians of the world. And that's another thing that I love so much about Cyberpunk 2077 is the fact that it actually deals with classes in society. You have the corpos, you have the street kids, and you have the people who are rejecting that and want to live within nature as much as possible, the nomads. And I love the fact that this world building feels so legit because you have people struggling on the streets, you know, just like you do in Hollywood. You see a bunch of drug addicts, a bunch of homeless people, and then you have the massive Google Tower right next to them, just a few blocks away, with people driving around in, you know, Lamborghinis and all of this stuff. It's the decay of equality. And of course, I do love capitalism. Socialism doesn't really work on paper, but having a massive divide by not having any regulations within the corporations is what has made the world of Cyberpunk 2077 a dystopian nightmare. And I just loved seeing the different structures of the classes in Cyberpunk 2077. It's what makes it feel genuine and real, and it draws parallels with what's going on in our own society and how we are still divided by the capital that we have and the technologies that we use, which is pretty insane because now the world doesn't actually have any reason to have countries that are completely void of clean water or electricity, but yet we still have places like that. But that's why I find it so interesting, you know, only the people going into these corporations have value. It's kind of the same structure as it is here in Japan, only if you go to university, if you have a degree, you're valuable within that society, which is pretty sick, if you ask me. So people who go to Arasaka Academy, get good education, or are born into corpo families, they are the ones in control of society, which is just such cool world building, and that's why Cyberpunk 2077 is a masterpiece, if you ask me. I hope all of my points thus far have made you realize that this game does have a lot to offer. Obviously, it is a subjective experience, everyone has their own personal tastes. So, Night City. As I said, it's run by corporations, the greed is out of control, AI algorithms run pretty much everything, technology separates most of the people, you get a sense of loneliness, and I think that's why I'm not saying they deliberately designed it this way, and it would have been better if there were more random encounters, but walking around, even though you have these characters you are interacting with, you know, your so-called friends, because you can choose how much you want to build a relationship with these, you know, side characters, how much you want to engage with the world around you, but all of the side content is actually worth doing, and you can't say that about open world games in general, because usually they are filled with bloat, and what I like about Cyberpunk 2077 is it's not filled with bloat. Everything that you engage with is useful. I just wish there was more randomness to the encounters and there were more choices to be made, but apart from that, I like the fact that there isn't tons and tons of pointless stuff to just collect in the open world or random side things to do. But I love the fact that there isn't a bunch of side activities that just detaches you from the world, where suddenly you're, you know, parachuting from a blimp, you know, something that just breaks immersion. Cyberpunk 2077 is all about immersion compared to something like GTA 5, I would say. But Night City itself is the character, because this city hates you. It wants to tear you down. It is the definition of a dystopian capitalist world, what a city would look like in that kind of society. And when you don't have laws and regulations and the government doesn't have any power there, I'm not saying governments are good, but when you don't have any type of system in place, most of the time it's anarchy, and it's only held together by tribalist gang warfare and the corporations. And I just love the nuance and the different interactions the police, the corporations, the gang members all have with each other. You know, it's exactly why tribalism is bad, and that's why I always preach about it, and that's why I'm trying to create my own Roman philosophy to bring back the golden age of virtue. If you are interested in that, make sure you check out my playlist. It's very difficult to find justice in Night City, and at the end of the day, it's the kind of story that makes you question your own life and what you value in your own life. Is it the legacy you build? Is it the people you meet? when time is against you, as time is against all of us, what do you do with that time? And that's why I think Cyberpunk 2077 is so fundamental, and it's different than any other game I've played. Other games have maybe asked these questions, but none of them have done it so well, in my opinion, and with such maturity as Cyberpunk 2077. Yes, it was broken on release. Yes, it's still not a perfect game by any means, but I do think Cyberpunk 2077 is special. You know, usually when you're playing a game, it doesn't ask, why are you actually playing this game? But by having such an introspective storyline and character who doesn't know exactly his purpose, if he's trying to chase meaning and a legacy for himself, or if it's about, you know, just finding people who actually value him as a human being when you're living in a city that doesn't value anything anymore. So this game is a goddamn masterpiece when it comes to philosophy, and like I said, it's the gameplay that is actually introspective. I think that's why Dark Souls appeals so much to me, because it doesn't tell you outright what it's about, and even though Night City is more of a set narrative and you're basically trying to get Johnny Silverhand out of your head, how you do that and what you do before the end, and there's multiple endings, it's all up to you, and you have to ask exactly why you're doing these things. And the game just deals with so much. It deals with, you know, the humanitarian themes, morality, faith in a godless world where nature is completely rejected nowadays thanks to transhumanism. If you even have free will when you're living in an automated society, you have different organizations that actually have history behind them. The world and the lore of Cyberpunk is so rich, and I didn't tap into any of that, but you just get it all by listening to the world, watching the TV, reading things in this world, and it all makes it feel lived in. The different corporations and Netwatch, having AI that in the future is kind of sentient and self-aware, that's kind of now leaked into our society, that was behind a black wall in digital space, but now is just, you know, but now it's just completely unregulated and interacting with society, which changes relationships and how people do things. This makes you ask questions about free will and what is the point of setting up a legend or a legacy for yourself, and where can you find meaning in this world. And I think that's very important, because that's how many of us think, is what is the point of existence, you know? Of course, all of us are individuals and we all have our own experiences and our own answers to that question, what is the meaning of life? But most games, you know, you get this stuff maybe from reading a book or watching a really good movie or engaging in some other type of media, but it's pretty rare to find this in a video game. And I feel like Night City just is like a horrible reflection of your own humanity, and it makes you ask all of these different questions, and that is the philosophy of Cyberpunk 2077. This is probably why this game took so long to be made, to be honest, in the first place, and why they had to rush things, because the artistry behind creating Night City and the geometry of the buildings and all of this stuff, it actually feels like a real Cyberpunk Blade Runner city. And for someone like me who's just always wanted to walk around like Blade Runner, the streets of Blade Runner, then this is amazing. And the fact that you can upgrade your legs later on, because like, God knows when I go to the gym, I only do upper body stuff, I need to goddamn do my legs. But in Cyberpunk, it's not a problem, because you can just upgrade your legs to get double jump, or hold down and get a boosted massive jump. And the fact that they actually put attention into the rooftops as well, because you can actually explore the rooftops and get some beautiful scenic shots when you have upgraded your legs, which most YouTubers need to do. But you know, they put a lot of attention to detail when it comes to the artistry. That's my point. Night City is absolutely beautiful and just horrible at the same time. That's why it's such an alluring place, and that's to me one of the main pulls of Cyberpunk 2077, and that's why Cyberpunk 2077 is a masterpiece now. It's also, of course, the writing and the sophistication of the writing on hand here. I would say this is far better than most television shows, you know, even the best of the best produced by HBO, or movies like A24. In my personal take, you know, they make some of the best stuff. The writing here is just so grounded and just actually makes you reflect on yourself. This game is all about self-reflection, and I think that was done deliberately because your character is dying, and basically you're always thinking about it in the back of your head. So it's a very kind of stoic philosophy idea, always reflecting on death. I don't want to get into the philosophy aspect yet, but you know, I think that's one of the main reasons it resonates to me. Now, to the, you know, average gooby goblin gamer brain, they probably don't care about this. They just want something that feels good, that's constantly entertaining them, and massive action and lots of different things to interact with, because that's what games are all about, right? But for me, this is more of a personal story. That's why I'm doing a retrospective of Cyberpunk 2077, because the whole game is about reflection and thinking about V as a character, but V is a reflection of yourself, because you do get dialogue choices, and there's quite a massive amount of dialogue choice, nothing compared to Fallout New Vegas or something like that, but far better than something like Fallout 4. So you can really imprint yourself onto V, and you can customize the character as much as you want. When you're interacting with the main characters or the side characters, or even in gigs, that's when the writing truly shines, because it respects that this is actually a mature game. And I'm not just saying, you know, it's mature because it's got gore and tits in it. No, this is actually a mature themed game for adults, and we don't get many stuff like that because a lot of video games try and cater to both audiences, but I feel that with its themes, it's actually respecting that this is for adults, and it's nice to have something with complexity and the writing is actually mature enough not to kind of take the piss out of itself 24/7. That's not to say there isn't humor in this game, and there's lots of dark humor. It's the characters that you interact with which makes this game special, and the relationships you form with them, because you can choose how you want to interact with them. They will comment on what you do as well, which is something I noticed, which is pretty crazy. And it's the relationship you forms with them, and it's the relationship that you create with them. Johnny being a perfect example. I always thought I would never actually like him, and he's just an absolute douchebag. But if you want to take the time and, you know, play his side missions and talk to him more as you do other quests and stuff like that, you can either completely shut him out and just completely just call him a dick, and that's the end of it, or you can let him in and see the kind of darker side of his character and his more vulnerable side. I do hope you enjoyed this Cyberpunk 2077 retrospective video essay. I guess this was kind of an analysis of Cyberpunk 2077 in some ways. And if you want more longer videos like this, and you have actually watched the video all the way until the end, thank you so much. That means so much to me. I can't even imagine that, but it does mean a lot. And I do try really hard with my videos to cover different themes, and it's very difficult to do this full time. So if you would support me by becoming a member, you get extra content, you get benefits, and you actually get to support me directly, or by just dropping a PayPal donation or something like that. I would appreciate it a lot. And I truly hope you enjoyed this discussion. Please leave me your thoughts down below in the comments. I love to hear what you think about this conversation. What are your takes on this game? Its themes, its tone, its ambience. As a game, if it's good enough, the gameplay aspect of it all. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't have its faults, because it does, but I personally just found myself absolutely immersed in this. So let me know what you think about Night City and Cyberpunk 2077. If you're going to give it a chance, if you're going to pick up the DLC, I will probably cover that at some point as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day, stay blessed, and stay based. Peace out.